Dalton. Where's Dalton at?
Before, no?
The Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, a few days ago, and another Iran Revolutionary Guard leader. So this, Iran says, is its combined response to the killing of several of its allied leaders, several leaders of Iranian proxies. So we're now seeing what Iran's justification for this attack was, and Iran said if Israel responds, it will face a crushing assault, a crushing defeat. So Iran is saying why it did it, and threatening to respond with more attacks should Israel choose to respond. And I'm very confident that Israel will choose to respond to this. The only question is how severe that response will be.
Richard, thank you. 2 waves of broken up about 5 or 6 minutes. This is pictures of Tel Aviv. Also that view from where Richard is, the entire Lebanon. You see this is the beginning of this attack of the defense. We don't know if there have been any casualties. We saw what appeared to be a number of these rockets or missiles make ground impact, or at least appear to make ground impact. It could be just they hit very low to the ground. But a number of them also appear to have been intercepted either by the Iron Dome, which is famously used by Israel, or fighter aircraft or other forms of interceptors used to defend Israel from this attack. It's hard to know exactly where these are. Of casualties or what has been hit tonight?
So, Lester, I've just been texting with the Israeli military spokesman. He is saying that there have been sirens going off basically all across this country, that nearly all 9 million people inside Green Line Israel have been told at various points to head to shelters. At this moment, there is no word on impacts or casualties. The Israeli military is advising the public that the explosions they've been hearing are either interceptions or the sounds of missiles hitting in the earth. So they seem to be, oh, Lester, there is an Iron Dome fairly close to us now. All right, Lester, that's the sirens. We're going to head to safety.
All right. Brad Sanchez, thank you very much. The sirens, this is the 3rd time we have heard them sound tonight after what appear to be 2 waves of attacks. We can't see, I don't know if that camera can move, but we're watching it right now. Clearly, Raf and his team heard the sirens, and they have a designated place to go to take shelter, as most people do in that part of the world. This picture right now appears quiet. I'm going to just pause and see if you can hear it.
Line. So it doesn't look like it's coming from beyond the city limits or beyond the sort of the suburb.
Okay, we don't hear anything in terms of the sirens. Let me go to Richard Engel. Richard's on the other side of the border, the entire Lebanon. Richard, you've been watching this, I guess, from the edge of these attacks. Are you seeing or hearing something new?
No, we saw 2 distinct waves, both of them intense. I would say now with the distance of a little bit of time, both the first wave and the second wave appear to have been roughly equivalent, both intense. They were separated only by a few minutes. Courtney talked to you earlier about all of the different missile defense systems that the United States and Israel have. And I would say, just looking at what we've seen over the sky and having covered a few wars before, that many different missile defense systems were in operation tonight. And initially, it seems that they were extraordinarily effective. Israel, the United States were prepared for this. And I think if there had been an enormous already know at this stage. So I think after this, assuming that this is done, We don't know if it's done, but Iran, has already issued its statement explaining what happened and saying that there will be threats if Israel responds. That does indicate to a degree that it might be over for now, but this is a historic moment. We will look back on this, I believe, in the days and months to come and see this as an inflection point. April came and went. Israel responded in a symbolic way, and the tit-for-tat exchange between Israel and Iran ended there. But when you listen to the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, when you listen to what he told Congress a few months ago, what he said to the UN just a few days ago, his speech directly to the Iranian people yesterday, it seems that Israel is and Prime Minister Netanyahu is much more likely to respond in a more severe way than he did in April, and we will see. We are still watching here, but for now, it does appear that this Iranian barrage is over, or at least paused.
Richard, there has been so much talk in the last few weeks about it, trying to avert a regional war. Obviously, Iran has said things to suggest it doesn't want a regional war. How will that be measured in terms of the intensity of this attack, whether this becomes something bigger than what we're seeing now?
So we are already clearly in a regional war, and in many ways we've been in a regional war from the beginning. A year ago, Hamas launched its massacre from Gaza. Hamas is backed by Iran. Hamas knew from personal experience that firing rockets and missiles at Israel is often not very effective because Israel has such intense and robust missile defense system. So what Hamas did on October 7th was breach the barrier. It broke down through the fences around Gaza Strip and carried out close quarter attacks, atrocities, and carried out a massacre on an unprecedented scale in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. What is going on right now, however, is that as Israel wraps up the Gaza war at an enormous cost to the people of Gaza, it is focusing its attention in the north here on Hezbollah. What Iran has just done is launch this attack to try and protect its allies, to try and protect itself, to try and protect its own image, because Iran's proxies are being wiped out one after the other. First, it lost Hamas, or has mostly lost Hamas. Now it is losing Hezbollah. Hezbollah is still robust. It still has tens of thousands of fighters. But Iran it feels that it had to respond with this air campaign. Will this now lead to a new stage? The ball is squarely in the United States and Israel's.
And that is that the Israelis have discussed that this retribution will be against economic targets. When you hear that, and you hear it in reference to Iran, think oil. So the lifeblood of the Iranian economy, the lifeblood of the Iranian government, of the regime, is based on oil money. Who's the biggest consumer of that oil? China. So we're looking to, this is going to become a global issue here if the Israelis do, in fact, go after places like Karg Island, which is the major oil transshipment point for Iranian oil, or someplace around the Strait of Hormuz where all of that oil, not just from Iran, but from all the Gulf states transit. So keep an eye on oil markets here, because they don't like things to be unsettled. And if they can't get the oil that comes from the Persian Gulf countries out of the Persian Gulf countries through the shipborne means, then this is going to have a global effect on economies as well.
Steve Ganyard, thank you. And if you are just tuning in right now, you are watching breaking news here on ABC.
Border. It went at a very sharp and low trajectory. I don't have any confirmation, but just based on the direction that interceptor was fired, it seems possible to me that rather than intercepting an Iranian missile, given that we just haven't seen any now for about 15 minutes, it seems possible to me that that Iron Dome was fired at something that was coming from the Lebanese border behind us. Again, that is not confirmed, but just based on the trajectory of the Iron Dome, it seems possible. And if that is the case, it is a potential sign that Hezbollah, despite being under intense pressure from Israeli ground forces, Israeli artillery fire, and Israeli aircraft, were, at least in some limited way, trying to join this large-scale barrage of Israel. And again, Lester, I should say that is not confirmed. What is confirmed is a spokesperson for the Israeli Airport Authority is saying that Israel's airspace is closed. Flights are directed to find alternate routes outside of Israel. And Lester, that is a sign of how intense this barrage has been. Even on some of the most intense days when rockets were flying out of Gaza in large numbers, Israel prided itself on keeping the flights going in and out of Ben Gurion Airport. There is only one really major international airport in this country. And when it is closed, Israel feels very, very cut off from the world. They go to enormous lengths to keep that airport open. But I can tell you tonight, in the face of what seems to be potentially several hundred Iranian ballistic missiles, the airport is closed, the airspace is closed. It is not clear when it will reopen, but I think it is safe to assume that Israeli fighter jets remain in the skies above us in case there is a third wave of incoming Iranian missiles.
All right, Raf, it's good to hear from you. Glad to know you and your team are safe. Let me ask you to stand by as I bring in Jeremy Bash, a former chief.
Happening overseas and the concerns that it brings at home. In particular, they've been paying attention to what Matt Gutman's been reporting about some kind of an attack with a number of casualties coming outside of a subway system and maybe onto a bus. So the police here in this country are paying particular attention for any kind of copycats, Kira.
Steve Ganyard, let me take that to you. Firsthand experience. If we think of attacks that have happened across the country, there always is a fear back here at home that citizens of the United States will be targeted as well. Since the Hamas attacks in Israel, we have been on high alert here in the United States over the past year. Your thoughts as New York is already responding with regard to security? Could we start to see this, say, at synagogues across the U.S.? As Aaron mentions, the high holiday. We're coming up on 1 year since the October 7th attack, and now Iran launching one of what we are told will be 2 waves of attacks into Israel.
Yeah, Kara, I think, times have changed, and
שרון למעלה, שרון. תרדו לרצפה. עדיין לא לעמוד, יש מלא. לא, אני יודע, אף אחד לא אומר. יש מלא.
A broader Islamic effort against Western targets that we had seen in the past.
And the question remains, as we continue to hear the air raid sirens, what exactly is Israel going to do next? Avi Melamed, former Israeli intelligence analyst, on the phone with me now. Avi, as you are watching these live pictures and following now what Iran says is, or what Israel has now confirmed as Iran firing these missiles into Israel, residents told to shelter in place. How do you see this unfolding?
Well, Kira, thank you for having me. I think that we should expect a massive Israeli retaliation in a volume and scale that the Mullah regime in Tehran has not experienced yet. The Mullah regime has conducted sort of an act of despair, trying to stop the avalanche of its proxies following the major blows that Hezbollah, the major proxy of the Iranians, sustained in the last couple of weeks. It may be counterproductive because the Israeli expected counter-retaliation to the attack on Israel may result in a very dire situation for the Mullah regime.
I think we lost contact with Avi. We will try to bring him back into the conversation. Ian, panel, let me take it back to you in Beirut. Are we hearing anything on behalf of Iran?
Yeah, in fact, we've had a couple of statements in the last hour or so. First of all, the Iranians released still images, photos of some of those missiles being launched. They were sent to a semi-official state news agency. First statement comes from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Command. It says that the operation was conducted based on a decision made in the Supreme National Security Council and with the support of the army. It says that the attacks were partly in retaliation for the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. You remember that happened earlier this year. He, of course, was the leader of Hamas, as well as Hassan Nasrallah, who, of course, was the leader of Hezbollah. It says that the order was given by the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Also a statement from the Iranian mission. This is at the United Nations, where you are in New York, saying Iran's legal, rational and legitimate response to the terrorist acts of the Zionist regime, this is what the Iranians say, has been duly carried out. They then go on to warn Israel, should Israel carry out any kind of response or commit further acts of malevolence, a subsequent and crushing response will ensue. They're also warning other countries who are allied with Israel to not side with them and to distance themselves. So they're certainly feeling very emboldened by this. You know, we have colleagues in Iraq right now, colleagues in Jordan, and they're all seeing the same thing. They're seeing these missiles flying over. This cuts to a lot of the divisions throughout this region between Shia and Sunni world. And it forces people to pick sides. And that's why it's also, I think, kind of a very dangerous situation. Iran now warning Israel not to respond. Israel almost certainly will respond. So does that then lead to a ratcheting up, which is the very thing that President Biden has been at pains to say repeatedly he wants to avoid. This is what American diplomacy has been directed towards. This is why Antony Blinken's been constantly shuttling backwards and forwards to try and calm the mood. But frankly, that diplomacy has failed. Calmer voices have not prevailed. And certainly right now, we're looking at a devastating night for Israel. Here in Lebanon, the attacks continue. Nearly 1 million people forced from their homes. This has been a terrible 2 weeks for Lebanon. The situation we know in Gaza has been absolutely awful. You've also got the West Bank, and now the possibility that it then spreads to Iran. So I think we're in a very, very dangerous moment for the Middle East, and it will affect America, it will affect Europe, and most of all, it's going to affect the people who live here, who don't really get a say in the decisions of their political and military masters. Kira?
Ian, thank you. Let's take it back to you, Avi, playing off exactly what Ian Panel is talking about here, and that is what would this retaliation look like? You say it will be massive. If we think back to July, when Hamas's political leader was taken out by an Israeli drone in Tehran, in country, right there in Iran, what does that say about Israel, its capabilities, and what it's willing to do within what you describe as a massive Israeli retaliation? How deep into Iran will Israel go, and how will they do it, Avi?
Well, Kira, as you may recall, the previous attack, the Iran attacked Israel in April 13, 14, there was a symbolic Israeli
Are heftier, larger.
עדיין לא לעמוד, יש מלא. יש מלא. אני שומעת. בואו אלינו. איתי, אני תופס אותך כאילו אתה מתחדש. כן, כן. אנחנו נמצאים אומנם כאן בזירת הפיגוע בתל אביב, אבל עם נדב והצלם שלנו רגע יציג לכם את המצלמה, אפשר ממש לראות את השידורים בזמן אמת, נאמר שכאן כבר אין הזקה.
Lester, time becomes a slippery thing in moments like this, but I would say it has been about 20 minutes or so now since we were able to see any sign of Iranian ballistic missiles from our position in northern Israel. Speaking to colleagues who are in central Israel, in Tel Aviv, it does appear quiet there as well. But if there were two waves, there could be a third wave. I've just been texting with an Israeli military official. I asked, does it look like the attack is over? The official says, too early to say. But we are expecting the chief spokesman for the Israeli military, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, to address the public potentially any minute now. That could be an indication that the Israeli military feels confident enough to give a new statement that they feel that this is over, but we will have to wait and see what they officially say at this point. I can tell you, Lester, this has certainly felt like a far, far more intense attack than the one we saw in April. Just the sheer volume of missiles. They arrived so quickly. They seem to have set off the sirens all across this country, and we simply do not know at this stage what proportion of them were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome defenses, by its jets in the air, and by American warplanes. But Lester, this is certainly another historic night in a year of historic nights, and I think in the White House, across the Middle East, people will be holding their breath as Israel examines the scale of the damage, and then all eyes will be on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his security cabinet, and the leadership of the Israeli military as they decide how, when, and at what scale to respond. Lester.
Okay, Raf, thank you. Let's bring in Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker. Kristen, what kind of reaction is soliciting now at the Capitol?
We are starting to get reaction from lawmakers, Lester. Let me share a little bit of it with you. Senator Marco Rubio saying large-scale, not symbolic missile attack from Iranian regime against Israel. A large-scale Israeli retaliatory response inside Iran is certain to follow. That's significant because Senator Rubio is essentially making the point, and Courtney spoke to this earlier, that he believes that any response should come from Israel. A different message coming from Senator Lindsey Graham, known for being hawkish on foreign policy. He says this is a moment of choosing for the free world regarding Iran. The Ayatollah and Iranian regime are religious Nazis who want to destroy the state of Israel. Their words, not mine. They want to purify Islam and attack the United States. Again, their words, not mine. The missile attack
White House
against Israel
just
should be...
listening to what Avi just said, Mary. You know, what does President Biden do at this moment?
Well, what I can tell you is what he is actually physically doing at this moment, and that is monitoring this unfold.
חבר'ה, עמדו על הרצפה, עמדו על הרצפה! יאללה, כולם על הרצפה שם! אנחנו רוצים להעביר את השידור לכתבתנו סיוון שנמצאת בנתב"ג, בינתיים אנחנו נתמקם במקום סיוון, כאן אנחנו מעבירים את השידור כעת אליי.
היה לנו נתקים טיפה בסאונד, כאילו... יאללה, בוא נחזור. אני רוצה לבדוק שנייה את המיקרופון.
תבואו אלינו כבר, תבואו אלינו.
תשאירו אצלנו את השידור, אנחנו...
חבר'ה,
שרון למעלה, שרון.
תרדו לרצפה. עדיין לא לעמוד, יש מלא.
לא, אני יודע, אף אחד לא עומד.
יש מלא.
כשהם יצאו אני אפתח את המנורה כי יש לנו לילה ארוך.
אז אני שומעת, בואו אלינו.
איתי, אני תופס אותך כאילו אתה מתחבא.
כן, כן. אנחנו נמצאים אמנם כאן בזירת הפיגוע בתל אביב, אבל עם נדב והצלם שלנו רגע יפיץ לכם את המצלמה, אפשר ממש לראות את השידורים בזמן אמת, לומר שכאן כבר אין אזעקה, לכן אנחנו גם יכולים כבר לשדר אליכם
בסדר, ואנחנו נסדר את זה שנייה.
באוויר את הירוקים שממש כאן מעלינו, זה מה שקורה עכשיו, אלו התמונות, אנחנו נמצאים בתור גם בסדרות ירושלים, לשמוע גם כדור ממש כאן מעלינו, יש כאן עדיין הרבה מאוד כוחות, גם משטרה כמובן, גם כוחות מיוחדים, גם כוחות הצלה והירוקים, פשוט לא עושים ככה, הבומים,
לי, תגידי להם שירדו על הרצפה.
חבר'ה, ירדו על הרצפה, ירדו על הרצפה! יאללה, כולם על הרצפה שם! אנחנו רוצים כעת להעביר את השידור לכתבתנו סיוון שנמצאת בנתב"ג, בינתיים אנחנו מתמקם במקום סיוון, אנחנו מעבירים את השידור כעת אליי.
היה לנו נתוקים טיפה בסאונד, כאילו... יאללה, בוא נחזור. אני רוצה לבדוק שנייה את המיקרופון.
תבואו אלינו כבר, תבואו אלינו.
תשאירו אצלנו את השידור, אנחנו...
חבר'ה,
שרון למעלה, שרון.
תרדו לרצפה. פישר, עדיין לא לעמוד, יש מלא.
לא, אני יודע, אף אחד לא אומר, אף אחד.
יש מלא.
כשהם יצאו אני אפתח את המנורה כי יש לנו לילה ארוך.
אז אני שומעת, בואו אלינו.
איתי, אני תופס אותך כאילו אתה מתחבא.
כן, כן. אנחנו נמצאים אמנם כאן בזירת הפיגוע בתל אביב, אבל עם נדב והצלם שלנו רגע יפיץ לכם את המצלמה, אפשר ממש לראות את השידורים בזמן אמת, לומר שכאן כבר אין אזעקה, לכן אנחנו גם יכולים כבר לשדר אליכם
בסדר, ואנחנו נסדר את זה שנייה.
באוויר את הירוקים שממש כאן מעלינו, זה מה שקורה עכשיו, אלו התמונות, אנחנו נמצאים בתור גם בסדרות ירושלים, לשמוע גם כדור ממש כאן מעלינו, יש כאן עדיין הרבה מאוד כוחות, גם משטרה כמובן, גם כוחות מיוחדים, גם כוחות הצלה והירוקים, פשוט לא עושים ככה, הבומים.
לי, תגידי להם שירדו על הרצפה.
חבר'ה, ירדו על הרצפה, ירדו על הרצפה! יאללה, כולם על הרצפה שם! אנחנו רוצים כעת להעביר את השידור לכתבתנו סיוון שנמצאת בנתב"ג, בינתיים אנחנו מתמקם במקום סיוון, אנחנו מעבירים את השידור כעת אליי.
היה לנו נתוקים טיפה בסאונד, כאילו... יאללה, בוא נחזור. אני רוצה לבדוק שנייה את המיקרופון.
תבואו אלינו כבר, תבואו אלינו.
תשאירו אצלנו את השידור, אנחנו...
חבר'ה,
שרון למעלה, שרון.
תרדו לרצפה. פישר, פישר, עדיין לא לעמוד, יש מלא.
לא, אני יודע, אף אחד לא מת, אף אחד.
Previous attacks, like the one against Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon last week. The IDF presents a series of options to the government. The cabinet sits over it, and then they decide what to do. That's what also happened with last night's incursion into Lebanon. So the plans are on the table. The question is, how far does the Israeli government want to take this? Just yesterday, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke publicly in English, directing his comments to the Iranian people, saying that the regime could fall soon. And so one of the things that we've begun to hear from Israeli analysts at this point is a call for a strike on the Bandar Abbas oil port and terminal on the Persian Gulf in Iran. It's a huge terminal that controls much of the oil that goes into that country and out of that country. And if that is hit, that would cause catastrophic economic damage to Iran. And analysts are telling me it could possibly topple the regime. That's how significant it could be. That would be a major strike. They're also talking about attacking other possible energy installations as well. Again, this is a cabinet decision, as Steve said, and Martha as well. It does not have to be decided immediately. After the last round of missiles hit, Israel took a number of days, even longer, to retaliate. And then it was a very restrained response, essentially firing a missile from an airplane against an Iranian radar base, sending the message that Israel can hit whatever it wants, whenever it wants, without being detected. We know that it's not going to be that restrained this time, despite U.S. efforts and
it's okay to move out of shelters. However, a response is coming. What does that tell you? I even am looking at you. You now have your helmet off, and it seems that it's taken a little bit of a pause, I guess, with regard to immediacy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
I'll have Nikki, our cameraman, turn the camera and show you that traffic, if he can make it past our producer Hugo, traffic is picking up. We haven't seen that in recent hours. There's a trickle of cars. People are starting to move about. Maybe they were cornered or stuck someplace, and now they're trying to get back home. Obviously, life is not returning to normal. Tel Aviv at this time of night is, as Martha mentioned, incredibly vibrant, even on a weekday. That is not the case now. And typically on a day like today, Kira, most people would be going to their families for the holiday, for the Jewish New Year. That's not happening right now, but people are starting to move around. You can see that there's a bit more confidence. Regarding the plan for the next attack, we don't know. And it could take days, it could even take longer. It depends how clear of a message and how big of a response there is. And a lot of it does depend on what kind of damage was caused by those missiles and those interceptors. But I can tell you one thing that has not happened, that I have not experienced in 25 years of covering this region. I've never seen a time when the major headquarters of the IDF in central Tel Aviv was evacuated. The major base for all of the intelligence, for Israel's version of the NSA, for the Mossad, for military intelligence north of Tel Aviv, was evacuated. Other bases around the country were. That is incredibly unusual. I think the only time that may have happened in the past was in 1991 when Iraq was firing Scud missiles. So this is a very unusual and uncommon event tonight, and you can tell the enormity of it by the Israeli preparation for this missile salvo, and of course it's not yet over. So the next few hours are going to be very, very tense here as they wait for a possible second wave. We don't know if there is going to be one, though, Kira.
So bottom line, Matt, the Israel's Iron Dome has done its job thus far.
There's this three-layered system of anti-missile defense. It's the Iron Dome for more closer-range missiles. It's the Arrow and David Sling. It's this trio that works on different levels of the atmosphere, and they seem to have worked very well. But we've seen these videos, and I don't know if you've seen them coming in or if you're broadcasting them over me, but of massive amounts, swarms of missiles coming in, and it looks like some of them are making impact. It's unclear how many have landed, but we do know that those interceptors to try to knock those missiles out of the sky also went up in unprecedented numbers to try to eliminate that missile threat. Again, everybody's still in assessment mode here in Israel, Kira.
Matt, thank you. And Steve, drawing what Matt just said about what could be the next phase here, or what exactly will Israel do as it sits back, waits, plans what its retaliation will look like. And you mentioned this early on about oil and oil installations and targeting that versus the death of the supreme leader. How do you see this playing out? Do you see more of Israel going toward that type of strategy, just taking out Iran's economy capability to get by day to day, the money flow, the oil flow, versus rolling in hot and going for the supreme leader?
It'll probably be a combination of all of the above, Kira, because the Iranian economy and the Iranian government relies for about 40% of its income from oil. So you shut off that income, and things like basic services begin to go away, which will not make the Iranian people happy, which may be what Netanyahu is alluding to in terms of sort of fomenting an internal dissent that he thinks is closer to the surface than may appear. But I do think that it will be something that will be done with a combination of ideas. In other words, you go after both the strategic leadership, you go after the economy, you go after the nuclear facilities. There are only a certain number of aircraft that can do that. The Israelis do not have the number of aerial tankers that the U.S. does, so they can't reject power in the same mass that they can into Lebanon. But I do want to pick up on something that Matt said a couple minutes ago, and about the number of these incoming. So if you remember back in April, the Iranians were essentially humiliated in that the Israelis knocked down 99% of all the incoming weapons in that attack. They learned from that attack. I was just looking at one social media video that's up on social media, and it shows, I counted 25 impacts somewhere in Israel within 1 second. And so what the Iranians learned was that they had to overwhelm the Israeli defenses by launching all of these ballistic missiles at the same time. So that's what they learned from April, and it looks like that they succeeded, and many of these missiles may have gotten through. Don't know what that looks like. Now, we have been covering the ground war in Gaza, the ground war in Lebanon. Those wars are very infantry-centric. What goes on in terms of missile defense is something that you would see out of a movie. It's usually controlled in a big room, in a dark room with lots of screens. You have all sorts of radar feeding in data. You have multiple systems, as Matt alluded to. There's a three-tiered missile defense system within Israel. All of those computers, all of those inputs, all those radar inputs are being fused at one point. The computer is actually making the decision on when to fire on which target automatically. So things are having to happen so quickly that it's really that the computers themselves are the ones that are defending Israel. And sometimes it's going to involve using U.S. ships. That may require voice communications. Like this is the old data link. It's all zeros and ones, and it's a very, very different war than what we see on the ground in Gaza or on the ground in Lebanon.
And again, how do you see the U.S. at this point playing a role? We already know that additional troops have been sent into the region. We know we have U.S. ships and capabilities out in the waterways. At what point does the U.S., I guess, pick up its role?
We're in election year. We're a tight election. I highly doubt that the Biden administration wants to involve U.S. Personnel in a shooting match with Iran at this point. It doesn't mean that the U.S. won't defend Israel, won't do anything that Iran, won't defend anything that Iran does in terms of follow-on attacks, but I highly doubt that the U.S. is going to get itself involved in direct attacks against Iran. I even highly doubt that they'll do things like provide tanker support to the Israelis just because they don't want to do anything to upset domestic politics. But again, the Israelis have the capability to do most of what needs to be done. They'll take their time, they'll pick their targets, and they'll have some sort of a strategy. But there certainly will be something, and it's going to be a news story leading all the way up to the U.S. elections.
Yeah, it's going to be a volatile time for sure. Just a little bit more than a month away, Steve. Let's take it back to our Ian panel, who's in Beirut. Iran now officially taking responsibility for these attacks. Ian, what more are we hearing from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard?
Yeah, I mean, no surprise, right? We knew that this was going to be coming from Iran. We had some questions, I think, for a number of days, especially after the assassination of Nasrallah, whether or not Iran would respond or whether it was afraid of the consequences. Well, they've certainly made their response very loud and clear. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps issuing a statement, as you say, saying that they were the ones who carried out this attack. They say that they targeted security and military targets. Also, the Iranian mission to the United Nations also issuing a statement saying that the attacks are illegal, rational, and a legitimate response to Israel's attacks. And when they say Israel's attacks, they obviously mean Israel's attacks on its allies, the proxies, Hezbollah here, Hamas elsewhere, also the Houthis in Yemen. So there was some sense that this was coming. They are also issuing very strong warnings, cognizant of the risks that Israel is going to respond, the very high risk that Israel is going to respond, warning them of devastating consequences if they do. And I think this is what's preying on everyone's minds right now. As Matt said, we don't know if there's another wave coming. Some of the statements seem to suggest that maybe that was the response. But we'll just have to wait and see, and the Israeli authorities will update us on that. But Daniel Hagari, the IDF spokesman, essentially saying that for now all things are clear for Israelis to go back out onto the streets. But yes, there are real concerns that there is another wave, then there's a response, then there's a further retaliation, and every time this gets ratcheted up, just to echo what Steve was talking about a minute ago, the United States, the Pentagon, has said that the US was involved in intercepting some of those Iranian missiles. So yes, defending Israel, but again, I think getting involved in anything larger than that, I think that's probably unthinkable at the moment. Israel has already laid out a full spectrum of potential responses, cyber attacks, physical attacks, maybe targeting specific individuals. They've been ready for this. That curious statement from Benjamin Netanyahu in this video address to the Iranian people just yesterday, where he talked about that they would be free sooner than they expected. Very curious choice of words, and telling the Iranian people, Persian people, as he called them, that there was a kinship between them and the Jewish people, but it was a clear threat to the Iranian leadership that change was coming. I think Israel thinks that Iran is a very brittle society. Economically, it's pretty devastated. Politically, any challenge to the regime, whether it's come from women protesting or it's come from more other kind of political parties, has been crushed by the regime. People suffer in Iran without a doubt, and I think Israel's assessment is that that can be unpicked quite easily. I don't know that that's true, because Iran, like a lot of other authoritarian regimes, has been very successful about controlling its population. But if Israel goes after its economic assets, if it goes after its key leadership, if it disrupts the ability to conduct command and control, as it did with Hezbollah here, it was astonishing how quickly you could see an organization that looked almost unassailable unravel just in a matter of weeks. They had astonishing intelligence here. They are believed to have astonishing intelligence in Iran as well. It's just with Hamas in Gaza, that's where Israeli intelligence failed. But we're just going to have to wait and see what the fallout is, see if there are any casualties, what the impact has been of these strikes, and then hear from the Israelis about what their response is.
Ian, thank you. And the IDF spokesman Daniel Hakari just saying moments ago there have been many interceptions, some impacts in central Israel and other areas. There will be consequences, and we have a plan. That's coming from the chief spokesperson for the IDF, Daniel Hagari. As Ian was saying, Israel definitely has a chance on how to respond to Iran's attacks, but everyday families cannot. Our Martha Raddatz has been talking to a number of those in Jerusalem, particularly those in families that have been in the shelters as we've been watching all of this fallout there in Israel. Martha, what are the family members telling you at this hour?
You know, Kira, you have talked to me and Matt and Ian, and we are all used to being in areas like this and covering wars. But I know a young family, a young diplomatic family who just arrived in Jerusalem several weeks ago, and she texted me and said, this is just intense. My husband said, incoming for real, and we scurried. We couldn't see anything because we were in our shelter. I made it a space room with a light that makes the ceiling different colors and stars, and put the kids' favorite movies on their iPads, but we could hear the sirens so loudly, and then the interception booms doing their amazing work. It's wild to plan for this, prep for this, know this can and could happen, but when we're on the floor holding the kids while the booms go off, it is a different perspective. That is a young American family who said, we just got the all clear, thankfully, so we can leave now.
Martha, thank you.
That perspective, and you can realize that you can look at those interceptions, you can know what those missiles mean and where they can hit, but being with your scared little kids is a whole different perspective.
And it seems that this has become a part of their lives, particularly in the past year. Martha, there in Jerusalem. Martha, thank you. Let's take it back to our Matt Gutman. Matt, we are now in wait-and-see mode.
We are, and you can see the flak jacket's off, the helmet's gone. Israel has announced the all clear. We understand that there have been over 150, possibly 180 missiles that were fired. Traffic is going again, but the damage is still being assessed. And we're seeing these videos that are coming in, Kira, and they show that there were some installations that were hit. Also, not military installations. This is still unverified, but some of the videos we're seeing are very, very dramatic in terms of the destruction caused by some of these missiles. As Steve mentioned earlier, they can cause catastrophic damage, even if pieces of them fall, not only because of high explosives in them, but also because of the momentum they're carrying and the speed that they're traveling. Again, Israel is now bracing for the next round. Ian mentioned it also, this retaliatory cycle. It appears that that is where we are headed next. The big decision right now, Kira, is with the Israeli cabinet. They are going to get a series, a menu of possible strike options against Iran in the coming hours and day or so. And at some point in the near future, I'm told, they're going to make a decision. We don't yet know what that will be. And we don't yet know how severe of a blow they want to level at the Iranian regime right now. But this was unprecedented, significantly more damage, significantly more missiles than we saw in the previous salvo in April, Kira.
And just as we are now in this wait-and-see mode, the options, Matt, that Israel has on the table, well, they have a lot of options, clearly. The question is, how much of a wider war could this turn into? The risks, the circumstances right now. Will Israel decide to hit those oil installations? Will Israel decide to hit infrastructure and all the surrounding ways that Iran survives and makes money? Or will Israel decide to go straight toward leadership and possibly Iran's supreme leader?
Unclear what they'll do. What we do know is that Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has essentially been in power on and off for the past 15 years and in some control of the government for nearly 20 years, really since 1996, has had Iran in his sights since the start. He considers Iran enemy number one for Israel, not Hamas, not Hezbollah. Iran is the head of the state, according to Netanyahu. He has been waiting for something like this, and to some degree, there are members of the Israeli cabinet and the government who see this as an opportunity to try to topple the Iranian regime, which has bedeviled them for so many years. They've tried to stop the development of the Iranian nuclear program. They haven't been able to do it. They may see this as their opportunity, but as Steve and others have mentioned, it's a long way from Tel Aviv to Tehran. Yes, Israel has demonstrated an incredible capacity to strike abroad, but Iran is much more complicated, and their nuclear facilities are much deeper and more entrenched here.
Iran now launching a retaliatory missile attack targeting Israel. Right now, things seem to have calmed down. We are in a wait-and-see mode. Life for those in Israel, they've been told they can leave the shelters, but things can change at a moment's notice. We will wait to see what happens next. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. David Muir will be here with a complete wrap-up on...
דברו איתנו בשש. דברו אליהם. אני גם מצלם אותם. עדיאל, אתם רואים אותנו?
Of a shooting attack in Tel Aviv. Talk us through what's going on.
Yeah, this happened in Yaffo, which is just south of the center of Tel Aviv, along the Mediterranean. And basically what happened is we see two individuals get off of some form of mass transit, and then they begin firing. Multiple U.S. officials have been briefed on this from Israel. There's an active shooter time incident. We know that there are U.S. officials
might be toppled soon, that we don't have a fight with the people of Iran. We have a problem with the regime in Iran. And it really, this is the question right now, how far do they want to take it? One thing is clear, though, the damage is not as extensive as some people had feared. I just got a text message from an analyst said, yes, some of those missiles managed to penetrate Israel's air defenses and hit military bases and apparently some civilian areas as well. But so far, we understand that there have been no casualties, at least that the IDF is aware of, and that is a big deal. The more severe the casualties, the more severe the damage against sensitive military installations, the more ferocious the response. And so the less severe this kind of damage, the more restraint Israel might be able to show. And you can rest assured the Biden administration is going to try to pressure Israel to hold back as much as it can. It does not want a massive regional war right now in the Middle East, Kira.
I don't think anybody wants a massive regional war, that's for sure. And Matt, while I have you, I mean, you mentioned regime change. Are we getting ahead of ourselves to even start to have that conversation?
I think so. Let's see what the next response is. I think the concern is that there might be a retaliatory cycle. What we do know, and what Israel's chief military spokesman has just said, is that there will be a response and it will be severe, right? This is not going to be what happened in April after Israel got about 120 missiles fired from Iran, including about 200 drones and cruise missiles. They managed to knock most of them out of the sky. There is much more damage this time. There is a larger number of missiles, and Israel is taking this more seriously. It responded that time largely due to U.S. pressure with a single missile strike against an Iranian radar installation, essentially showing Iran, hey, we can hit you at your most sensitive installation without you even knowing it. And clearly Israel has penetrated the Iranian regime with its intelligence apparatus. The Mossad has incredible assets in Iran, as we saw with the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh a couple of months ago in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard guest house, like the Holy of Holies. So if they can penetrate there, they can get anyone. The question is, Do they want to do it? And how much of an international outcry is Israel willing to withstand to try to topple the regime? One thing that I am hearing quite a bit at this point from analysts is that Israel might go after Iran's energy infrastructure, possibly something like the Bandar Abbas port. That's where a lot of the oil comes in and out on the Persian Gulf. And taking out a major oil port and terminal could have a significant impact on the Iranian economy, which largely relies on oil to sustain itself. So that's something that is a possibility, Kira.
Matt, thank you. Let's take it now to our Ian panel. He's in Beirut, our chief foreign correspondent. Ian, just to play off of what Matt was just saying, it seems that, of course, this is becoming more political, no surprise. There are members of Congress, senators, and others now taking to social media platforms, and it seems there seems to be a group of leaders now rallying behind this idea to urge President Biden to strike those oil refineries. Just one a tweet that came out from Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina saying this is a moment of choosing for the free world regarding Iran, the Ayatollah and Iranian regime and religious Nazis who want to destroy the state of Israel. Their words, not mine. They want to purify Islam and attack the United States. Again, their words, not mine. The missile attack against Israel should be the breaking point, and I would urge the Biden administration to coordinate an overwhelming response with Israel, starting with Iran's ability to refine oil. These oil refineries need to be hit and hit hard because that is the source of cash for this regime to perpetrate their terror. My prayers are with the people of Israel, and may God continue to bless Israel. Your thoughts, Ian, as we watched these strikes unfold. Iran saying there will be 2 waves of missile strikes into Israel. That first wave has seemed to calm down. Now it's a wait-and-see scenario of what that second wave will look like and what exactly Israel will do. Your thoughts on this urging of the president here in the United States to strike those oil refineries?
I mean, this becoming political is the last thing that's probably needed. At the very least, this should be handled by the diplomats, but I think, unfortunately, it's going to be handled by military leaders, at least for the foreseeable future. But for this then to become an issue in the presidential election campaign, I think probably would be unfortunate. It'd be unfortunate for the Israeli families who've just spent the last hour terrified, hiding in their shelters. It'd be deeply unfortunate for the almost 1 million people here in Lebanon who've been forced from their homes. The children, the mothers, the innocent civilians around this region who've become victims of this much wider war, not of their choosing. I think that will be that pressure, though. It's interesting, Lindsey Graham's statement there. What happened in April, remember, again, this was a kind of tit-for-tat response, but the lid was kept on it. Iran fired at Israel, and Israel intercepted over 99% of those incoming missiles, and Israel responded, but it was kind of kept to a certain tempo. There is a huge risk here that that tempo can't be maintained. Was this just Iran making a show of force? They had to respond in some way after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, and also, of course, because of the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah here in Beirut. They are the leaders, the creators, the supporters of this so-called axis of resistance, which involves Hamas in Gaza, the Iranian Shia groups, the pro-Iranian groups that operate in Iraq, as well as, of course, Hezbollah here. And they've all been looking to Iran ever since Nasrallah's assassination, just at the start of the weekend, for some kind of response. So was this just a show of force to say, yes, we've done our job? We saw celebratory gunfire here in Beirut tonight, and there'll be other places, certainly in the Shia crescent of countries that stretches from Iran to here in Beirut, who will be celebrating tonight. Is that enough? Is Israel's response going to be kind of tempered? I think that's the biggest question by far tonight. Will more sensible heads prevail? I think what Lindsey Graham has to say will be music to the ears of Netanyahu, and certainly to the right-wing members of his cabinet, who see this as a moment of reckoning for all of Israel's enemies. And that brings enormous danger. It brings danger for Israel, as we just saw tonight, and Israel's citizens, but it also brings enormous danger for the region. It risks drawing in other people. Now, the whole prospect of the United States being drawn into another Middle East war, when it still has troops in Iraq, of course, but nevertheless, it spent years extricating itself from the quagmire in Iraq and the quagmire in Afghanistan. The last thing that the United States needs, and even if you listen to President Trump, he's no advocate of U.S. Involvement in overseas wars. But of course, there's always a difference when you start to talk about Israel. People start to talk about religion. Involves the Christian far right as well as the religious, the Jewish far right as well. People who advocate for a wider conflict, I think, are going to have their voices heard at the moment. But I think the real danger is that if Israel listens to them completely and responds, then we're in a whole different ball game. Kira?
And we're still in a wait and see for what this wave 2 on behalf of Iran will look like and exactly what Israel will do in retaliation. Ian, thank you. Let's take it to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Do we know if President Biden is still in the sit room, Mary?
We don't know exactly if he's still in the sit room right now, but of course he was monitoring this unfold in real time there with his national security team and Vice President Kamala Harris. What we do know is that there will be some kind of response. The big question, of course, is whether the U.S. will play any role in that response. The White House earlier today making very clear that there will be severe consequences for an attack like this. Of course, we do know that the U.S. has said that they will provide additional defensive support if needed. They'll protect U.S. forces operating in the region, obviously. And, to Ian's point there, when you think back to what happened in April, the U.S. at the time made, a big point of stressing that while they were helping to defend Israel, that when it came to the response, that the U.S. made very clear they had no role in any offensive operation. I would not be surprised if you see something similar play out here. Of course, this is, a different attack, different circumstances. The big picture here cannot be lost, that this is exactly what the Biden administration and what President Biden have been trying to avoid for almost a year now. This kind of escalation and turmoil in the region, this fear of a wider war, which is now very much upon us. But how does the president assist Israel, back up our ally, while also not getting the U.S. dragged further into this, especially not, let's be honest, with an election now just around the corner here in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's the timing of all of this is quite adds quite a twist, Mary, for sure. Let's take it to our senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky, there in New York. This strike happening so close to the high holiday, the Jewish New Year. It starts at sundown tomorrow. Aaron, you were reporting that concerns overseas translating here to concerns here at home, and law enforcement already taking up precautions, adding more security to synagogues in the New York area.
And they were doing that not just in New York. We heard from Los Angeles, from a number of departments, that we're going to be paying extra attention to places associated with the Jewish community in advance of the high holidays, beginning, as you say, tomorrow evening, the start of Rosh Hashanah. But more importantly, what precipitated what's unfolding now, the death of Hassan Nasrallah, the Hezbollah leader, in an Israeli attack, that in and of itself may not galvanize any individuals in this country. He doesn't have a big following in the United States, but what's playing out on TV, their intelligence officials are a little more concerned that could cause somebody to act out. And in fact, we just had a look at an assessment from the Department of Homeland Security saying that in addition to this missile barrage, one concern for the United States would be whether Iran follows it up with attacks on cyber infrastructure, cyber attacks on American infrastructure. That would be one concern here, in addition to the lone wolf who may see what's going on their TV and decide to take matters into their own hands. That's why the alert among law enforcement officials in this country has been so high ever since last October 7th and leading to the year anniversary since the Hamas attack on Israel, Kira.
Aaron, thank you. Senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty joining us from the Pentagon now. What's the word there at the Pentagon, Ann, as we know?
The crosshairs, they of course want to also defend Israel and Israel's right to defend itself. They say that that is a very clear message. But we're going to be hearing from the Pentagon later today. And of course, I think one of the top questions will be what role will the U.S. play in any kind of retaliation from Israel?
Okay. And so can you guys tell me where we're going next? Okay, great. All right. Ann Flaherty, thank you so much. Of course, we've got a lot of moving parts here with all our correspondents overseas and here back at home, from the Pentagon to the White House to what we've been monitoring here over in Israel. We are
What the fuck?
עדיאל, אתם רואים אותנו?
What the fuck? חברים, דברו איתנו בשש. דברו אליהם. אני גם מצלם אותם. תסתכלי מעליי. מי לשמה? לשמה. מי לשמה? איתי! אתם רואים אותנו? נופל על הרצפה. לא, זה חלקים של נראות, תעלו חבר'ה! זה חלקים של נראות, זה לא עלינו בכלל. וואו! מה יש לך? מה אתה התפן אליי? אחי, אתה יודע לעבוד? עיתונאי, לך הצידה. מה? זה מצווה אולי. שמתפוצץ, ולא הרבה. זה כאילו עשן? לא, זה לא. תפילה. סליחה. בואו. אנחנו 9 אחי. 9 אחי, בסדר. 9. תסתכלו. יופי, לי תעני. מתקשרים אליך עכשיו, תעני. חכי לי, את הולכת רחוק, אין תאורה. אנחנו צריכים לשכור עליה, זהו, עמדי, לא לזוז. לי, אני שומעים את האלפונה. יאללה, בוא נרוץ אותי.
לא מתקשרים אליי.
ודברו, לי.
הם בממ"ד.
זה בלתי, זה בממ"ד. איזה בממ"ד?
אפשר לעשות מעלה ממישהו ממד"א?
תבואו אלינו כבר, תבואו אלינו.
תשאירו אצלנו את הסיפור, אנחנו...
חבר'ה,
שרון למעלה, שרון.
תרדו לרצפה. פישר, עדיין לא לעמוד, יש מלא.
לא, אני יודע, אף אחד לא אומר, אף אחד.
יש מלא.
כן, ירצו, אני אפתח את המנורה, כי יש לנו לילה ארוך.
אז אני שומעת, בואו אלינו.
איתי, אני תופס אותך כאילו אתה מתחדש.
כן, כן. אנחנו נמצאים אומנם כאן בזירת הפיגוע בתל אביב, אבל עם נדב והצלם שלנו רגע יציג לכם את המצלמה, אפשר ממש לראות את השיגורים בזמן אמת לומר שכאן כבר אין אזעקה, לכן אנחנו יכולים כבר לשדר אליכם באוויר את היוצאים שממש כאן מעלינו, זה מה שקורה עכשיו, אלו התמונות, אנחנו נמצאים בתור יפו, בשדרות ירושלים. גם כוחות מיוחדים, גם כוחות הצלה והירוקים, פשוט לא עושים הבומים.
לי, תגידי להם שירדו על הרצפה.
חבר'ה, ירדו על הרצפה, ירדו על הרצפה! יאללה, כולם על הרצפה שם! אנחנו רוצים כעת להעביר את השידור לכתבתנו סיוון שנמצאת בנתב"ג, בינתיים אנחנו נתמקם במקום סיוון סיוון, אנחנו מעבירים את השידור כעת אליי.
היה לנו נתקים טיפה בסאונד, כאילו... יאללה, בוא נחזור. אני רוצה לבדוק שנייה את המיקרופון.
הלו, חבר'ה! מה יש לו?
הלו. אחורה. הלו. אחורה.
נויה! נויה!
נהיה לה ירותי.
שיסרקו, מסתכלים על זה.
בסדר. הוא נוסע הירות הזה. עדיין, שומעים אותי? חברים, שומעים אותי? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Targets in Israel. The United States military coordinated closely with the Israeli Defense Forces to help defend Israel against this attack. U.S. naval destroyers joined Israeli air defense units in firing interceptors to shoot down inbound missiles. President Biden and Vice President Harris monitored the attack and the response from the White House Situation Room, joined in person and remotely by their national security team. We are still working with the IDF and the authorities in Israel to assess the impact of the attack. But at this time, and I stress at this time, we do not know of any deaths in Israel. We are tracking the reported death of a Palestinian civilian in Jericho in the West Bank. We do not know of any damage to aircraft or strategic military assets in Israel. In short, based on what we know at this point, this attack appears to have been defeated and ineffective. This was first and foremost the result of the professionalism of the IDF, but in no small part because of the skilled work of the U.S. military and meticulous joint planning in anticipation of the attack. We are also aware of reports of a terrorist attack in Jaffa that took the lives of a number of Israeli civilians and wounded several others today. Our condolences go out to the families of the victims and to the family of the Palestinian civilian in Jericho. Obviously, my update here is based on early reports, and we reserve the right to amend and adjust as necessary as we gather more information. The word fog of war was invented for a situation like this. This is a fluid situation. We will consult with the Israelis on next steps in terms of the response and how to deal with what Iran has just done, and we will continue to monitor for further threats and attacks from Iran and its proxies. We are particularly focused on protecting U.S. service members in the region. And with that, I'll take just a few questions. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. Is the administration making any preparations to evacuate U.S. citizens from Lebanon or elsewhere in the region?
We have been very clear for some time now that U.S. citizens should avail themselves of commercial means to depart Lebanon, given everything that's going on. We have said that from this podium, from multiple podiums. We continue to say that, but we have not begun triggering a non-combatant emergency evacuation, a NEO, and do not have an intention to do so at this time. If that changes, we'll let you know. But we continue to reinforce the point. American citizens in Lebanon should follow the guidance from the State Department, which is to find civilian commercial means to depart, because in extremis, we may not be able to get them out safely.
Yes.
Thanks, Jake. What is the U.S. view on whether Israel should retaliate, and what is your concern about this leading to a wider escalation of war in the region?
We've had some initial discussions with the Israelis in the aftermath of this at the military level and also at the White House to Prime Minister's office level. We'll continue those conversations in the hours ahead. I'm not going to prejudge or get ahead of anything. We want to have some deep consultations with the Israelis, and I'll have more to report to you after we get the opportunity for deeper discussions.
And escalation in the region?
Obviously, this is a significant escalation by Iran, a significant event, and it is equally significant that we were able to step up with Israel and create a situation in which no one was killed in this attack in Israel so far as we know at this time. We are now going to look at what the appropriate next steps are to secure first and foremost American interests and then to promote stability to the maximum extent possible as we go forward. Yeah.
Back in April, the president's message to Israel was to take the win when the U.S. and Israel were able to intercept the barrage of Iranian missiles. Is he recommending a similarly limited response this time?
I will not, from this podium, share the president's recommendations. He will have the opportunity to share them directly. We're going to have, as I said, ongoing consultations with the Israelis this afternoon, this evening. It is too early for me to tell you anything publicly in terms of our assessment or in terms of what our expectations are of the Israelis or the advice that we will give them.
So will he be speaking to Prime Minister Netanyahu today?
I don't have anything to announce from this podium, but I can tell you that he is tracking this minute by minute. We are very much deeply in touch with the Israelis, and insofar as we have calls to read out, we'll make sure to read them out with you. Just last question, then I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Jake. In April, after Iran struck Israel, the U.S. issued a number of sanctions as a consequence. This morning, the president said there would be severe consequences if Iran carried out this attack. What are those consequences, and are they more severe than sanctions?
Totally legitimate question, and that answer will come based on the conversations and consultations we have with our Israeli counterparts. It's too soon for me to stand before you today and give you an answer. What I can tell you is this. We are proud of the actions that we've taken alongside Israel to protect and defend Israel. We have made clear that there will be consequences, severe consequences for this attack, and we will work with Israel to make that the case. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Jake. Okay, on to the rest of the programming here. This morning, President Biden was briefed by his Homeland Security Advisor, Liz Sherwood-Randall, on the latest impacts of Hurricane Helene, and this afternoon he will receive an interagency briefing on the Hurricane Helene response and recovery efforts. At the president's direction, the Biden-Harris administration continues to use every tool available to get assistance and resources to the communities that need them the most. Yesterday, the president approved a major disaster declaration for Georgia, which will unlock additional assistance to help those recovering. This is in addition to the major disaster declaration swift.
כן, כן, גם פה, בכל כלל. איפה? שמה. לא, בוא, לא בפנים. עכשיו באתי משם. לא שם. עוד לא, תכף נראה. לי, עדיף, אנחנו נעלה פעם אחת, אתם כבר בשידור או שעוד לא?
אתה יכול להיות איתנו?
מאיפה אתה? רויטר.
Mayorkas is now stepping up to the mic. He's probably going to talk about immigration efforts there. But we're going to bring it back to our Jay O'Brien, who's at the White House for us while this briefing is going on. Jay, the National Security Advisor there talking about, and Alex Brochet, thank you for joining us now as our breaking news coverage continues. We were both listening.
אנחנו 9 אחי. 9, יצא. 9. תסתכלו. יופי, לי תעני. מתקשרים אליך עכשיו, תעני לי. תגיד לי, אתה הולך רחוק, אין תאורה. אנחנו רוצים לשכור עליה. זהו, עמדי, לא לזוז. בגדול. לי, אני שומעים את העיתונה. יאללה, בוא נרוץ אותי. לא מתקשרים אליי. תדברו עם לי. הם בממ"ד. זה בממ"ד. אפשר לעשות מעלה ממישהו ממד"א?
דברו איתנו בשש.
Marcus Moore, who's in Beirut. What's the word from there, Marcus?
Well, Kira, there were gunshots that we heard in the air, in the streets of Beirut behind us. Also, there were people dancing and playing music and cheering in the streets. All of this in response to Iran's rocket barrage this evening. Certainly this has been a very significant week for people here in Beirut, particularly following the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, because as I speak to you now, we are in several days of mourning here in Lebanon and in several other countries across the Middle East. And so a lot happening here. And to Inez's point about what happens next and whether the U.S. Can put enough pressure on Israel to contain whatever their response might be. I think when you talk to people here in Lebanon, they have long said that the U.S. U.S. officials are the only ones that can stop Israel from its bombardment or from expanding this conflict and this war. And that really is the sentiment. But at the same time, people will say, you know, the U.S. is talking about the need for diplomacy, but at the same time, supplying Israel with weapons. And as we saw tonight, helping to defend Israel from Iran's rocket barrage. And so there really is a large part of the population here that doesn't have a lot of faith in what the U.S. officials say as it relates to a ceasefire or any potential ceasefire or anything that would put pressure on Israel. And again, that's the feeling of a lot of people here. And as I tell you that, and Kira, as you well know, in the midst of all of this, the military actions that we've seen, the talks of diplomacy, there are everyday people who are literally suffering as a result of what we've been watching unfold here, not only here in Lebanon, but also in northern Israel. They can't go back to their homes. And here in Lebanon, it's the same story. And people have lost their loved ones in the midst of what's happening here. So as we talk about what could happen next, and while diplomacy seems to have fallen short, it is the only hope that people have on either side of the border here for there to be some resolution to this.
All right, Marcus, thank you. I want to take you straight to the State Department now. I understand the briefing has begun. Can you tell me who? Okay, let's listen in.
And its partners was able to successfully defeat this attack. This was a brazen, unacceptable attack by Iran, and every nation in the world must join us in condemning it. Secretary Blinken joined President Biden, Vice President Harris, and other members of the President's National Security Team in monitoring this attack as it was unfolding, as well as our response. As the President has made clear, our support for Israel's security is ironclad. We will continue to stand with the people of Israel at this critical moment. With that, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. So I think this probably goes without saying, but just to make sure we get on the record. So in terms of what happened in Israel, there no damage to any U.S. facilities, no injuries, no nothing.
At this time, we are not aware of any damage to U.S. facilities. As you know, we issued an order earlier today for our personnel, State Department personnel in Israel to shelter at their homes. We have full accountability for all our personnel. We're not aware of any civilian casualties inside Israel, let alone an American citizen casualty. There is one report of a Palestinian who died in the West Bank, but no damage to any U.S. facility either.
And then both you and the National Security Advisor just a few minutes ago talked about this being a brazen and unacceptable escalation. But does the administration see anything that Israel has done over the course of the last 3 weeks as escalatory?
So certainly they have done things to expand the conflict. But if you look at the actions that they have taken, they were bringing terrorists to justice, terrorists who have launched attacks on Israeli civilians. If you look at what Iran did today, we have been warning for some time about the threat posed by Iran arming and funding terrorist groups across the Middle East, and the attack today just demonstrated the danger of those actions. What you saw was Iran launching a state-on-state attack to protect and